Good evening. I'd like to call to order this December 8th meeting of the Columbus Municipal School Board. At this time, we would like to ask that Dr. Sean Parker, pastor of the First Baptist Church here in Columbus, to come forward and provide invocation. Welcome, Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board. We appreciate your service to our community very much. Now, if we might bow our heads, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we acknowledge your presence among us tonight with grateful hearts. We recognize that every good and perfect gift comes from above, from you. And Lord, we don't deserve any credit or merit for anything that is good in our lives or in our community. So, Father, we express thanksgiving to you for the health that we enjoy as individuals and as families. We thank you for the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans. We are thankful for the sense of community that we enjoy in the city of Columbus. We are grateful, Lord, for the capable leadership that you provide for us in our city. And I'm particularly thankful for the capable leadership represented on this board and for the efforts that they give week after week, month after month, year after year in providing the best educational opportunities available to our children. Father, I ask tonight as they meet that your Holy Spirit would give them wisdom and guidance. I pray that they might be able to communicate with each other with clarity and a sense of understanding. Father, as they make decisions, I pray that you would give them discernment and discretion so that everything is done decently and in orderly and in order. And Father, I pray that you would help them to find that balance between conviction and cooperation, which is so important in the process of working together. Lord, during this Christmas season particularly, we are mindful of the greatest gift that could have ever been given to us, and that is your love through Christ our Lord. And we pray that you would help us during this season to reflect that same sense of joy and peace and love. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Parker. At this time, we'd like to ask that Cadet Senior Airman Brianna Cochran from Columbus High School would please come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
At this time, we would like to recognize that we do have a quorum present tonight. All trustees are present here tonight. That brings us to item number 4, which is open forum. We do have one person who has signed up for open forum, Jean Massey, the Associate State Superintendent for Secretary of Education, Mississippi State University Research and Curriculum Unit. Okay. So we're going to note that she's not here today. Did we have anybody else to sign up? I don't think so. All right, that takes us to item number 5, which is adoption of the agenda. Board, this does require an action. Is there a motion? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes, trustees, one from November the 5th, November the 10th, and November the 17th. This will require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Lewis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on our agenda is item number 7, Office of the Superintendent, Dr. Philip Hickman.
All right, the first thing that we would like to do is definitely show recognition to our our parents for our parent involvement this month. And we have selected our PTO presidents. So if the board can join me down on the purple carpet, we want to give certifications and call up certificates and call up each individual person. First, if I could have Sarah Stalin. without the waiver. I'm sorry, without the waiver, they were a C, and with the waiver, they were still rated as a C district. Just to kind of explain the matrix and the color of the matrix. So obviously, it starts with the grade system. That's a D. The total points is a collective of the points within the color matrix, or the percentiles. And so within reading, when it looks at proficiency, those are kids who are on grade level or above. At Stokes-Beard, we had 56% of our students in reading and 50% of our students in math, and 58 and 55% in science. And then we have a real strong, robust plan to really look at what individual students, and I'll talk about that later, who those individual students are and how do we target growth in those students. One of the things that the next category where it says growth of all students, the reason why it's in green, what Mississippi does is they also look at what is that number compared to other students within the state of Mississippi, other school districts within the state of Mississippi. And so that fell within the 61 to 80 percentile of students within the state of Mississippi, or schools within that area grew 65% or more. And obviously we want to look at 100% of our students growing, and that's our goal. But the same thing in math, we only had 64% of our students. The last category looks at the growth of the bottom 25%. And the reason why that's important is it's when we always talk about making sure that all of our students learn, we do have our students who are grade levels or multiple grade levels behind. What Mississippi is doing by highlighting the bottom 25% is to make sure that we just don't target our education towards one population of students, that we're not just growing the students who are at grade level and above, but it's looking at what are we doing to affect the bottom lower percentile of our population. Again, our goal is 100% of our students, even at the bottom. We want all of our students to grow, but that's 100% of our students. So what that is saying is that 57%, and so we still have a large percent of students that either did not grow at all or actually declined. So that's what that's meaning with the remaining amount of students. Go to the next slide. At Fairview Elementary, the same thing at the top where it lists, they have been a C-rated district all the way through. And the reason why it's a C again, in the state of Mississippi, we look at adding all the numbers and comparing. So even though if you look at the numbers and you see 55% is not a C, but in comparison to other school districts, a lot of points were gained in the great job that they did in a sense of growing students in the math area, and that's why it's blue. And that added a lot of points. But really what we're looking at as a school district, we really want to concentrate on our students that we are putting at grade level and how are we growing our students. And again, we want to grow 100% of our students. So no matter where our students are at, we want to bring them up, that they don't just come to our school and either maintain or drop. Okay, so at Sale Elementary, the reason why you see that T color blue is because comparison to other schools in the state of Mississippi, they actually fared pretty decent. Although, we're still talking, a little under 30% of our students in reading that we're not on grade level, and a little under 20% in math. And again, we're shooting for a higher number towards the 100%. The area of deficit was the growth of all students in reading was in a lower percentile, but they made up gains with the lower 25%, 50% of those students, which is still, again, we want to hit at 100%. Go to the next. At Franklin Academy, Franklin's grade was a D, but with the waiver, their grade came out to be a C. they're proficient in reading and math, and obviously in reading, we're talking, 50% of students either were not proficient, and 45% were. And then in math, the same similar number when we look at science. And we're looking at how do we also address our science issue. And we have a plan with that we're going to roll out in February of how do we address our science and STEM issues. But only 49% of the students, of the total population of reading students grew. And the lower percentile of students in the lower 25%, only a little over 50% grew on both of those. When we look at Cook Elementary, they previously were a D, and even with the waiver, they were a D, have a larger population of students, so it adds a little bit more to the variance. But again, a little over 50% of their students were not on grade level, and on 42 to 43% were proficient. Similar in math, and our science scores were, compared to the state, were pretty low. And then it's similar coloring as far as growing all students. It's kind of flat in a sense of in the lower percentile, and the same thing as growing our bottom percent. But again, that's a larger school with a little bit more variance. We can look at the middle school. The middle school's grade, similar between all with and without the waiver, fared out to be a D. And they ended up in the same thing, a little over 50% of our students at the middle school were not on grade level, and same thing in mathematics and science. And again, if you look at the bottom percentile of students in the lower 25, we kind of didn't do a good job of growing those students at the middle school as well. Now at the high school, there's some interesting things that went on at the high school. And so with the students that are at the high school, and I'm saying this for a reason, so with the students that are at the high school, only 40% of our students were proficient in reading, so on grade level. And then when we look at science and U.S. history, those are criteria for our students to be able to graduate. And we're, in excess of 80% and those kind of things. So those are areas where we really are concerned and really looking at. And growing the bottom 25%, only 19. The other thing, the reason why I say these are the students that are remaining is because our graduation rate at that point in time was 61, around 60%, 60%. So that's 40% of our students drop out of high school. So if you just do the math, 40% of like 1,200 students, that's about 440 students drop out of a 4-year cohort. So that's an average of about 110 students a year that we lose. And that's something that we cannot do. We cannot function like that. That's a lot of students. That's a school. And so we have to look at how do we target, and we have some programs, and we're working with the high school on developing enrichment programs and programs to really grasp at the need of our students to allow them to be successful. But again, the reason why it's in red is because it was the 0 to 20% of schools within the high schools within the state kind of showed those numbers. But it's a trend for our district to really have kind of a little bit elevated scores in math than we do in reading. And so that's kind of a good point to look at how can we ramp up those numbers and what kind of students are we producing in that area. And then overall, for us, we were a D-rated school all the way through, even with and without the waiver. And you can see where we fell wrong within the percentiles all the way through. And again, for some reason in math, we're usually elevated in as a district, just as a trend of a district. Overall, the way that we grew math was better than 40% of the schools in the state. But again, we're not happy with any of those numbers, and those are the things that we really need to address. And as you see the number of years, just to be clear, and we talked with my principals, this is not something that we can do overnight. And so we're putting together a comprehensive plan to really look at ways of changing the landscape of education in Columbus, because we have a lot of great teachers and a lot of great administrative staff, and just really looking at how do we put our talents together and really be purposeful about growing student achievement. And so, no, we're not at all happy with our rating. And I sent you guys some literature, and just to make sure some of our parents understand. You know, right now within the state, they're trying to decide on what assessment tool to hold us accountable for. And so, you know, I don't know if anybody read about the governor said something to the state superintendent, you know, and so those things will work itself out. Our job is to educate kids to reach their full potential, and that's something that we have a strong commitment of doing. And we had a lot of heart-to-heart, and these are the facts. You know, I also want to be careful that we understand our scores with context and before we place a value of our scores. And I guess an example of that would be if I just mention the word $500, you know, a lot of things will come to some people's mind. But if I said, my 13-year-old kid, I give him $500 a month for allowance, you guys would say, it's too much, right? But if I said, my net worth is $500, you would say, that's not good. And so understand that some of the scores, you're looking at them without the appropriate context. And for scores to come, and the reason why we say that this is going to be a long-term plan, meaning that our bottom percentage of students, we have to grow a long way to grow before they meet proficient. Our students who are proficient, we're going to continue to grow those students. And so we want to make sure that we're not leaving any student behind and that we're growing all of our students. And so that's kind of our state accountability data. The next aspect of it, and you can't see it, and it's going to be totally different. I just want to kind of make everyone aware, and we saw the colors and those kind of things. An assessment tool that's going to help us is called NWEA or MAP. And again, I apologize for it being small. You're going to start seeing this, and so I want to make sure that you guys know what you're looking at. And I'm sure, during parent-teacher conference and stuff, we want to really start to put together a data photo for kids and parents to be able to understand. But what we're going to be looking at, because the board has asked me to really, monthly, to look at, are we growing kids? Where are we at? What's the growth rate? And if not, what plans are we putting together as administrative staff? So for instance, this is a first grade report, and this is from NWEA, and it goes all the way up to high school. And this is from Cook Elementary. That's what it says up there. I understand you can't see it. But this is a report on math. And if you remember the colors, yes, this is a report on math. You remember the colors. So this is going to give us, every time a student takes this assessment, it gives us the landscape of where our students are at. The reason why I cannot show you it big and comprehensive now is because our high school wasn't finished taking the test. And so until we mark the assessment as complete, then it will factor analyze and it will give us comparison data. We'll be able to compare schools. We'll be able to look at trends of a district. We'll be able to look all the way down to the individual student. But basically, this is at the hand of every teacher and every principal. And like I said, they can go down to every single student. So a principal can look and say, you know what, this is the areas that we need to really concentrate. This says number and operations. It really looks at overall, this is our math score. And so, we want to look at the two numbers of students in the know. and this is comparison to what was reported. This is a recent test that they just took. So for instance, this is, I'm sorry, when you look at percentile, it's about, 40 to 50% of our students are not where we want them to be. But we can look at the growth of those students. And so what we want to be held accountable for at the beginning is the growth. We always want to be held accountable for growth, but we want to be held accountable for growth, meaning that we're not committing that this student will be here within 1 year. But we want to make sure that this student is moved up the ramp so the trajectory of this child's future is bright. And so that's the same thing. We want to grow all of our students. We want these students to be here, and we want our students in this, we want this number to fill up. And majority of our students, if not all of our students, fall in this category is what our eventual goal is. And so that's just to show you that. And then the next one, it's the same thing at reading. And so we have that data available to us, and we will share it with you guys here. Your principals will have it. And this is just a benchmark assessment, okay? So meaning that it's not given every day, it's not given every single month. But benchmark, I'm sorry, it's a benchmark assessment and it's an adaptive assessment. Adaptive means that it's not an end-of-course exam. So it's not, if you're in first grade, this is what you should look like at the end of first grade. It actually breaks it down to every individual student, every question. So when a student answers correctly, it asks a harder question. When a student, it then allows the student to level out, and it hits a ceiling and a floor. And so it looks at the student's true ability and really where your student is at. And so therefore, the next time that they take that assessment tool, we can really see if that student grew, that student maintained the same, and that student dropped. And then our questions are, why? And what are we going to do differently? If the student grew, why did they grow enough? What are we going to do different? All that's we're going to look at everything. We're going to factor analyze it and be very prescriptive about what we're going to do. We're going to be very intentional so that long term, we won't end up in the same status that we're at right now. Okay? All right. Did we have any questions over the data? Okay. I'm sorry? All right, so let's give a textbook update. I know that it's a good topic. So Friday, just to make sure I'm following through on the board request, Friday we took every single textbook that we were not going to use. Well, not we. Told them, and then they told the principals. And then at the last minute, I mean, principals were scrounging around and really putting things together. So I appreciate your hard work. But we took all the textbook that we were able to, that we were not intentionally going to use, or that didn't have a stamp in it, is the other caveat. And we personally packed them up, put them in yellow Penske trucks, and drove them to Jackson. We didn't want any excuse about mailing, losing it. We had the inventory all the way down to exactly what book or supply or free with order that we returned. We received a phone call actually from the head of that textbook company that we took them back to the state, but they said that they promised us that we will get 100% return on whatever it is that the state, the warehouse, the school book supply deemed acceptable. They will make every effort to give us 100% return on that. And so the numbers, we have to wait until the warehouse codes everything, and then the company codes everything. And so everything that we were not going to use, we sent back. And right now their promise to us is that we're going to get full credit for those items. Are there any questions over? And those were the textbooks that we purchased in July.
Mr. Lotzenheiser?
Yeah, I know you're going to have to wait for them to do their due diligence and to check out the textbooks, but based on the volume that was sent back, what would be the approximate credit coming back to the district if they give us credit for everything that we returned?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't. We made every effort to return every textbook that we were not going to use.
Okay, let me ask you this, percentage-wise of the books that were initially received, back in the April-May timeframe, percentage-wise, how much of those did we return, do you know?
I'm not going to make up a number. She said it varies by school. Okay. Because some schools could have chose to keep some of the things, some schools could have stamped some of the items.
Okay, one final question. What have they indicated would be their time frame to do their due diligence, and when are they going to come back to us? Have they given us a commitment to come back in a certain time period?
I'm sorry, did you say, they said before Christmas? The week before Christmas?
Week, okay, thank you.
I just have one comment. I'd like to applaud everyone's effort that participated in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trust me, I heard from a couple of principals. All right, so I apologize myself for putting it kind of in a rush fashion, but I do appreciate it. If we can go to the next one. All right, exciting news. We have an after-school academy. All right, and so our after-school academy is where we're actually targeting certain students and really hitting on mental enrichment, getting them prepared to really grow as students. So from our elementary and our middle school, we have a total of 45 days in a sense. So we started at December the 2nd. We already started, and we're going all the way until April the 30th. So for instance, those are the hours of our elementary schools, just to make you guys aware. We have a full busing system that actually pick our youngsters up and take them home. We also provide them with a light meal, in a sense, to make sure that we do our due diligence in that way. And those are the number of students per site that we have that attend each location. At the high school, we have a twofold program, and Jill was graciously able to add a credit recovery. And so, obviously, still December 2nd to April the 30th, and the same 2 days, or I'm sorry, opposite days, Tuesday and Thursday. But in this after-school academy, the enrollment is 53 students. I actually just met with one student. The other aspect is that, like I said before, we have a credit recovery. And so when we talk about that we have 40% of our kids dropping out, this is one way, one intervention to really look at those youngsters who have failed courses, and which is one reason why some of our students left, and make that intervention. And I might say that there's another great thing that Jill and Chris graciously host beside this, and I actually just left the high school, and I'm getting high fives, and so you guys have made me cool, but bring your own device. And so we started in December, and our children, we worked with Beth to work on a digital citizenship policy, and to also strengthen the internet, or at least the kids at the high school say we did, but turn it on and make it available. And our children are able to bring their own digital device, whether it's a phone, an iPad, and those kind of things. Jill worked real close with her teachers to make sure that they were comfortable with it, because as an adults, we have different philosophies. It's scary. Sometimes we don't want kids, what are they going to do? They're just going to play with their device all day. They're going to be distracted and those kind of things. So Jill did a great job of working with her teachers to prepare them for this is what we're going to roll out. And this is kind of a pilot program, and there's a reason for this. The real direct reason is, and we do have a lot of our computers in for our 2-to-1 initiative. Once we pass out the computers, 2-to-1 is still, when I talk to my students, to our students, 2-to-1 is still not good enough. And so a way to close that gap of 2-to-1 is to have students bring devices. So not every student is going to have a device, but once you start being in the classroom, you close that ratio between this person is able to be on the computer and this person is able to be on their iPad or their phone or those kind of things, it closes the gap between that digital divide. And we really are preparing our kids for the future. So definitely want to thank Jill and Chris for allowing us to do that. And then we're going to push it down. So then we're going to, once we iron out the kinks, we're going to go down to the middle school. And then the elementary, we'll probably sprinkle it in. It probably won't be every day, but we'll at least start to get them used to bringing a device or so to school. All right. Discovery Academy. So this is a good thing. What we have is coming in January, and it's going to be each month. We're going to have a Discovery Academy. January, we're only going to have 3. They're going to be on every weekend, every Saturday, from 9 to 11. And so, like I said before, the first program that we roll out is going to be in January, and it's really an enrichment program. And so this program is all about really designed to look at the cognitive and affective ability of our students to really do things that are out of the box. So when they go here, so for instance, it's for grades 1 through 5, and here's a course offering for the first. And our gifted teachers are packaging our course offering, but it's available for all students. Now, it's the price is $50 per student. If you have 2, it's $75, 3 or more. I believe it's $15 for each additional child. So, for instance, if you look at the wacky names of them, one of them is Creative Chemistry. And so the purpose of this is to really add a hands-on component, a real enrichment component to be able to really challenge our kids and to get them out-of-box thinking, to enjoy learning at a higher level. And once again, this is the course offering that we're going to have for January, but they're going to change or they're going to add, and we're open to suggestions. And again, right now, as the first couple of courses, we're opening it up to only students within our school district, but later on we may open it up to all students within the Columbus city limits. And so, if you can go to the next one. I'm sorry, go back. Oh yeah, I did talk about everything. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. The other thing is for our adults. And so we have CMSD University. And so part of CMSD University, when our teachers come back in January from their long break, they're going to be able to be blessed with some professional development. And with that, they're going to kind of go back to school in a fun way. And they're going to be able to choose what courses that they want to look at and take throughout the day. And those courses are from 8 to 12. And then they go back to their buildings until 4, and there's professional development and kind of building level needs that need to be taken care of at the building. And real strong, Mr. Shannon and Pam and Janet really worked hard at putting that together. Family movie night is tomorrow night, all right? And we're going to see the Penguins. I don't know how excited you guys are about that, but my son is very excited. You know, he went straight to my wallet to take money out to sign us up for it. But believe it or not, so the movie theater is in partnership with the movie theater. And you would think that, and they're also going to include popcorn and drinks. One of the things that's great about this is our families really came together to support this. We have, I think right now, 861 individuals who have paid, right? Paid, not just signed up, but who have paid ahead of time in order to attend this event. So we're shutting down the movie theater for our school district, and this is an awesome thing. This is great. And Janet has worked real hard on taking a seed of an idea and really growing it and developing partnerships, and that's one of our goals, partnerships. All right. Are there any questions over any of the activities and partnerships and things that we have going on throughout our district?
Board, are there any questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Hickman.
Thank you.
I would like to say I think this is very exciting, and I appreciate the innovation and work and effort that's going into this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is actually, I got a note that said that Miss Massey, if I'm pronouncing that right, or is it Macy? That she is here. And so, board, if we want to allow her to make her presentation, we need to amend the agenda, so that will require an action to amend the agenda to insert her at this point. Has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Ms. Massey, please come forward. Thank you for coming and sharing with us tonight.
Thank you, and we apologize for being late. We were at the Lowndes County Board meeting before we came to you, so it ran a few minutes late with us getting here, but we do apologize, and thank you for amending your agenda to allow us to come. What I'd like to talk to you tonight very briefly about is to share with you some innovative ideas that we have been looking at. About 3 years ago, we really became involved with looking at, from the Mississippi Department of Education, of innovation that we could bring to our school districts that would provide opportunities for our students to be successful. You just heard from your superintendent about the large number of students that are dropping out. That's what we're talking about. Our regular high schools do a really good job, but there's a high percentage of students that go through our high schools in Mississippi that want a different experience. What we're looking at, and we began looking, and we've taken groups from the Golden Triangle area, and this will be an adventure for about 3 districts in this area. The Lowndes, well, actually more than that, Lowndes County, Columbus, West Point, the Starkville area. It will provide what we call an early college high school experience for students within your district. East Mississippi Community College, Mississippi State University, the school districts in this Tri-County, in the Golden Triangle area, and Mississippi Department of Education will be going together to provide the first early college high schools in Mississippi. North Carolina has over 75 early college high schools. Texas has a large number. We visited both states, and we're working very closely with North Carolina New Schools Projects because they just got a $20 million grant that we're a part of for the startup of this early college high school. Basically, what an early college high school does is it begins with a cohort of 9th grade students. And understand, we're only talking about 50 students from all of these areas, so we're only talking about a few students from each district. But what it will do, these are not the students that you think about as being your AP students. These are not the high flyers in your school district. These are not those students in your school district that are very involved in the current high school experience, sports, activities like that. This is that high school student that's at school because that's what they have to do. This takes that cohort as a 9th grade group, puts them at East Mississippi Community College, allows them to go through 4 years on that campus, earning a high school diploma and quite often an associate degree at the same time. This is that student we're looking for that may be a first-generation college goer. There may be no one in their family to help guide them through an experience at college. It may be a student that thinks, I'll never get to go to college because there's no dollars there for me to do so. It may be simply a student that does not fit into high school. I saw Jill sitting back here. I bet she could tell you within 3 weeks of school, walk in her cafeteria and say, that kid is very capable of doing the work, but they don't want to be on my high school campus. That's what this is for, is that student that often drops out, not because they can't do the work, but because they don't fit into the high school experience. We have a lot of work to do over the next 6 months before we open the first cohort. We will be coming back to you continuously during this time to update you on the progress, to answer questions as we move along, but this is just to let you know what we're looking for and an opportunity that may be out there for your students. You were given a sheet of paper that kind of goes over it very quickly. I'm not going to take up a lot of time, but I'll be glad to answer any question you might have at this time.
Ms. Lossnizer?
On the handout that we received, the question is asked, how will it be funded? And it says various sources of funding will be used. Could you kind of expand upon that, if you could, and share with us what those other, what the various sources could be?
The various sources, you get the MAEP dollars, so you can look at some of those dollars. We have innovative grants or funding that comes from the legislators. Once we really get this and some more ideas nailed down, we will be taking a group. We'll probably ask 1 or 2 of you to go with us to the legislature this year to see if we can gather additional funding. As I said, we're part of the North Carolina New Schools Grant, so they will provide a tremendous amount of professional development and training that we will not have to pay for. The community colleges will also have some dollars into this, And we'll be looking at partnerships, because that's a big part of it. You talked about partnerships earlier, but when you get onto a college campus, it may be that a student in this group really wants to do a certain career in technical field. So funding from those areas that can help in those. There may be those that really want to do an academic piece and go on to Mississippi State afterwards. So we'll be looking at scholarship dollars and different things. We're still looking at funding, and a lot of it will depend on the students and what we can do to pull additional dollars in.
One other question. You mentioned that North Carolina and Texas are pretty far advanced in this,
Yes,
and this
sir.
is kind of the model that we're looking at. How many do you have any idea how many school districts in those states, you know, and how long they've been involved in it?
North Carolina is well over 10 years into this process. They have over 75 schools and a lot of early college high schools, and that early college high school may serve more than one school district. So they have the largest number there. Texas has a large number, especially in the El Paso area, the Dallas and Houston area. They don't have quite as many as North Carolina, but they're not very far behind. And most states have some form of early college high schools. We're one of the few states that has not begun this pilot project for students.
So the cohort of 50, is that the initial number that you're
And that's-
looking at?
Yes, what you start is with the ninth grade cohort.
Okay.
And once they move to the sophomore class, you bring in another 50 for the next incoming ninth grade. You're looking you're looking at a school of about 200 kids. This is a small environment, a lot of one-on-one, because what you're doing in the ninth and 10th grade is really taking these students that are very capable of working and getting them basically up to AP type levels, so that as juniors and seniors, they're mostly taking dual credit courses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss-
And
oh,
one
Mr.
question as
Spears,
far
no
as the
question.
more advanced results that you've seen from other states, how does it go as far as pipelining into other universities or other programs? I mean, what's not necessarily the success rate, but you know, how will this help facilitate getting those students into those different campuses, as well as scholarships and other types of programs that they're going to need in addition to the academic side of it?
In North Carolina, I can tell you that the students that go through the early college high school, if they want to go on to the universities, most of them are going on scholarship dollars, because they want this type of student, because they've made the commitment to finish. And with the college completion initiatives that are going across the nation, and colleges getting funded from students being able to complete and complete on time, and early college high school students, they have a much higher graduation rate than students that are not in the early college high schools. They also, students that go through the early college high school have a higher graduation rate. They completed about 92, 93%, as opposed to about a 78% in a normal high school. So once you get the students into the environment, it really helps them to complete. And it is an application process where the students and the parents make the application to the early college and go through an acceptance piece. Normally in a cohort of about 50, by the time they graduate, you're still going to have about 45 of those students there. They can always come back to their high school if it's not the setting for them.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Massey. One of the things that you mentioned, one of the areas that you're going to be looking for funding is in the area of transportation. What kind of formula, two things, what kind of formula do you have for selecting the students from the Golden Triangle region? And what kind of plan do you have for transportation to EMCC Mayhew?
The selection process will be built. That will be, part of that will be selecting someone to run it, to select representatives from your district and each of the other districts to help develop the application process. We have different applications that Texas has used and North Carolina has used. We want to adapt them to what we need, but you'll be able to see that first. We will make sure that a percentage of students comes from each zone, so that one district does not get all the slots. We'll make sure that it's, number one, it becomes on, really, you look at desire to complete. You look at first-time college goers. You look at the economics of the student, you know, because if they are not going to have the ability to go to school at some point down the line, this is an opportunity for them. So it's really taking those things into consideration first. And a lot of it is the student and the parent's desire to be there. As far as transportation, we'll work it out. I know you have your career and technical center here, but a lot of districts already have routes with career and technical centers, and it'll be based on that similar needs. And it's kind of early to say until we see where the kids are coming from that really want to come. We set hours at the at East Miss and things like that, but transportation, a student will not be left out because their parent could not get them there. We will work that out.
Dr. Hickman?
I don't know, one of the things for being a part of the committee, one of the things we're also looking at is to decide whether or not, or where the scores fall, so that both districts can share their scores. Am I correct?
That's correct. What he's talking about, when you saw your report card up here, these kids that come from your district and end up taking the subject area test at the early college, their results could be sent back to their home high school to be part of the model here. So there are a lot of things to work out as we move forward, because each district has different concerns, and try to address each one of those. We've had a group working on this within the area, the Tri-County area, and we'll continue to meet with them, and they'll continue to work with us as we develop this. Business and industry has been a part of this also.
Very good.
One other question.
Ms. Fisher?
Thank you. One other question regarding your advisory or government board. How are you soliciting public participation?
We will be addressing those issues I do not have in stone as yet. We're working with East Mississippi at this time to set up some guidelines. Part of it, too, will be based on some work that the legislature does this year of setting up governance pieces. But one thing we're very certain of is we want input from each of the zones or each of the areas where we bring students in. Yes, sir.
Actually, you do. So on the committee, it's all of our superintendents, and then it's also some industry folks, and Myra is there on the committee. And so there's a separate committee that decides what profile we think is best in order to what students to target and what criteria they have to meet. Then it's a group looking at the funding. It's a group looking at the transportation, group that's developing partnerships and those kind of things.
That's the groups that are currently working. And I think you were asking, once it's set up, what would be the governance of it. We're still working on that governance piece for once it's set up. You're
All right.
welcome.
Are there any other questions? If not, thank you very much for coming and
And thank
sharing
you
with
for
us
allowing us
tonight.
to be, and once again, I apologize for us being late, but we were doing this same thing for another district also.
Thank you again. Board, at this time, we are at the consent agenda items. We do have we have 6 items under the consent agenda, and I'd like to point out that we have 4 different policies that are going to be taken up on the consent agenda. One to deal with suicide prevention, the other with dyslexia, the other is for regular board meetings, and the last one is for time and place of regular board meetings. There's another, that's it. So we're going to have 4 policies that we address on the consent agenda, but there are 6 items in total for the consent agenda. This will require an action. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the Office of Personnel, consideration to approve the staff personnel items. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the recommendations. If there is not any discussion at this point, this does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears and second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Well, Dr. Hickman, you said you have,
I have 2 central office folks if they want to come up and introduce themselves.
okay. So first we have Mr. Okay, Mr. Mr. Pugh?
Say something.
He
Bruce
put you on
Pugh
the
from-
spot. I know. He put you
He
on the
did.
spot. Okay. All
From Harrison County Schools.
right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Position that you're going to take.
District Test Coordinator.
Test coordinator. All right. Thank you very much and welcome to the district.
And my name is Gregory Hundley. I will be serving as the Personnel Director for the Columbus Municipal School District. I'm coming from Mississippi State University, where I've worked there for the past 6 years, and prior to that, I worked with University of Mississippi for about 6 years as well. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
All right. Thank you and welcome. Good? Okay. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the Office of Business Management, Mrs. Tammy McGar.
Yes, the first item, item A, is the consideration to approve a budget increase from the fund balance for the payment of the Section 42 refunds in the amount of $99,884.74.
Okay. So board, this will require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser, second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion?
Just,
I guess this is a question for David Dunn. Mr. Dunn,
Lotzenheiser.
are we going to, since this is a settlement of a claim that's been, made against this district, are we going to get some type of separate release document, or just the cashing of the check would sort of operate as a release to the school district?
There be no release document. Basically, these taxpayers were owed the money. The city or the county hired Mr. Huskinson. He looked at it, we looked at it, and came at it from two different directions and agreed that they were owed, so there's no need. The other taxpayers did not, basically did not file the necessary action to appeal it. So they're not owed, so there'll be no releases.
So we have the motion that's been made by Mr. Lotzenheiser and the second by Mr. Lewis. Mr. Spears, you have some
and
discussion?
it's just a follow-up on this, what Mr. Dunn was saying is that the deadline is fast for them to file, or past is for them to file, so at this point, this is what it is, and there won't be any additional, in the future, lawsuits related to it.
I can't tell you there won't be any lawsuits. People sue,
Well, I
but
understand
there's
that
no
point,
basis.
so-
There's no legal, basis. It's my opinion that we don't owe the others, so.
Okay,
But now these folks are getting what they
right,
wanted, so there'll be no reason for them to file anything.
okay. Thank
All right,
you.
so it's been properly motioned and second, and we've had discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve the consideration, please signify by raising your right hand. Mr. Lotzenheiser, Mrs. Fisher, in favor, so it is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the CMSD Facilities and Activities Upgrade. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the information provided to us by the superintendent.
President?
Yes, Mr. Lotzenheiser.
According to the agenda, we have to approve a budget increase, and we have to also approve the one-time payment. Did that motion cover both of those, or do we need a separate motion on each item, Mr. Dunn?
I would say we need I think the motion that was made was for the budget increase only, and we
That was my understanding as well.
we need a separate motion for B.
So we've had an opportunity to review the documents, and that brings us to number 2, the consideration to approve the increase in budget from fund balance. This will require an action. Is there a motion?
I make a motion for the approval of the one-time payment of $99,884.74 for the Section 42 refunds.
Okay. Has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the CMSD Facilities and Activities Upgrade. Item number 1 is Facilities and Activities Support Documents. Board, I think we've had an opportunity to review that information. Are there any questions about anything on those documents?
Yes.
Mr. Spears.
Just is Mr. Green available? If we could get him to come up, just some questions and things I know would be directed to him.
Mr. Green, would you come forward, please? Everybody's being put on the spot, put on the carpet tonight. Welcome, Mr. Green,
Welcome, Mr. Green.
or Coach Green.
My questions really go back to is, early on it was to focus on those areas that were in desperate need of attention and repair and maybe building and different things. And so, we go from, and I guess because I've pointed this out before, we've gone from those numbers up to, now everybody's playing on AstroTurf and we need AstroTurf. So could you kind of explain to me, obviously I know that the number that is being asked for tonight would include a lot of those early on discussions of buildings being constructed, repairs made, things, but kind of the necessity as to why we carry it to that next level before we address those early on issues.
This was not approached to me as, it started building as we started needing a new track. We had to fix the track problem. We don't have a soccer field. And all of this kept growing. And then when it got to a point where I realized that the numbers were going to be that large, then we might need to consider going ahead and doing something that would be long-term, such as the turf, is what I mentioned in the last meeting, that would address all of these concerns if we were talking that amount of money. Now, if the board had approached me and said we only have this amount of money to spend, I would have taken a different approach as to what I presented to you. But it was my understanding is you asked me, what do we need? What would put us as a first-class facility? And that's where the final number came in.
Okay. And just to kind of, go on to that is that if we look at building a hitting facility, what the girls softball team needs, and I think this also includes expanding the fence out as what you described to us on our walkthrough, renovating and updating the field house. All of those numbers combined come up to about what total? About $500,000?
I can't put any figures. You're asking me something without looking and trying to come up with an ideal figure for that.
Would y'all put the sheet up on the board, please? It will be listed as the proposed CMSD athletic facilities renovation options.
Item 9C1.
Yes.
Is this the one you're referring to?
It is.
Okay.
Yes. And I apologize, I got knocked out there. Okay. So if we look at the costs being proposed, items 3 through 9, which is add lanes to the old track, new lighting poles, all those different things, how much of this cost would be part of the artificial turf for football/soccer? I mean, the $1 million is the $1 million just for the construction that's required just to put down turf at the football field. Is that correct?
In my head, adding 3 through 9, it was about a $700,000 project to move the track and to expand and make it a new soccer facility.
Right. Okay. And then if we come down and we look at 10 and 11, which is to install French drains to divert new track to divert water, those 10 and 11 amounts are for over beside the high school or at the current track setting by the football field?
That would be the new at the current high school stadium.
Okay, so
to fix that.
So you would have to do the $175,000 in addition to the $1 million for AstroTurf and construction.
No, and again, I'm getting these figures from what previous places have spent to do theirs.
Right.
But it is my understanding that I feel comfortable that the drainage problem could be fixed once the total track and turfing of the football field was started. That would solve the drainage problem by building the new track and AstroTurf field.
Okay.
And
now,
would not, and let me say this,
sure.
And if it doesn't, and I haven't gotten into with the contractor as such, if that doesn't solve the problem, then I would suggest that not happen. But right now, the idea is that If we go that route, the drainage problem for the track would be solved, and that would be your 10 and 11.
Okay. Now, as far as the 12, 13, 14, and 15, which are the baseball indoor hitting facility, covered existing batting cages, 35,000, kind of explain that just a little bit more for us.
Those were just options. Number 12 is what we would love to have or need, which is a need for our facilities. Number 13 was an option if that was not something that the board wanted to do.
So if you go with 12, you do not need 13.
Correct.
Okay, and then, of course, 14 and 15 are necessary because I believe that's been identified. The scoreboard really does not function properly, and press box is needing some
disrepair.
attention,
Yes, sir.
Which is an understatement. Then if we come down and look at the softball, 16, 17, 18, and 19, only 17 would be eliminated if you go with 16, 18, and 19.
Correct.
And then, of course, as we've discussed before, expanding the weight room in the field house, you're talking about either doing 20 or 21, not both. So one's either 50 or one is 75.
Correct.
In your opinion, what needs to occur?
It depends on if the soccer complex is moved to the field, the football field, then we're going to have to keep that side of the field house because that's where the girls' locker rooms are. We would have to have that, so we wouldn't be able to go over there and consume that part of the field house. So if we move the soccer complex to the football field, then we have to keep that side of the girls' locker room. And so 50 would all that is needed.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding in attending sporting events there at the football field is that there is a, I guess you call it concession stand building that was built under the stadium that is not used during football games.
That is correct.
So would it be possible to go back in and do some work in that particular facility to address the girls' needs in that facility? It has bathrooms, it has other things that maybe could be reworked to provide space for those type of programs?
I haven't looked into that, but I would think that might be a possibility. We do use it
It's a relatively
occasionally.
new building. I mean, just like the others that are built out there, I mean, it's going to need some work, but it's from my understanding, has been used very little.
So you're asking if the soccer is moved to that facility, if we build the soccer field on the football field, and move the girls' locker rooms into that old concession stand, could
I mean,
we
you
then
have to go
allow
back and
football?
remodel it and do different things to it to fix it to where they need. But, I mean, would that be something, if it's space-wise, would it provide adequate space for usage for those programs?
It's not large enough.
Yes, I'd have to say
I mean,
your
I'm
answer
saying,
is
looking
yes.
at what facilities that they had at the current field house, it'd be a lot larger.
Yeah, well,
space.
considering that soccer has no facilities right now,
Exactly.
zero facilities, Mr. Lewis.
That concession stand that he's talking about, is that the one right up under the bleachers?
That's what I think he's talking
Is
about.
that the one that's utilized by the middle school
middle
PTA to
school.
raise funds?
It is used
During the football
occasionally
games?
during the middle school games. It is used right now.
Okay.
Now, if your question is, could they sell out of another concession stand? That's something that we would have to decide at that point, but if you're trying to get at, do we want to expand the field house to include that whole thing? That would be the ideal situation, but you have to have locker rooms for the girls' soccer team.
Right. And just to continue on, just to finish up my thought, if you don't mind, is if we go down and we look at the weight room facilities and different things, because obviously you'd have to blow out that wall and push back to get that additional space. When we get to the middle school, that's really the only spending that will be done outside of the high school facilities, correct? That's listed as 25, 26, and 27.
You're asking, do they need anything other than that?
No, I'm just asking in this proposal, that's the only items that have been identified that will be spent off the high school campus.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So in going through and looking in totaling up, and obviously I don't have any type of number to quantify for remodeling the concession stand, you know, if that was an option, just to consider, you know, it was my looking at different things. If you were to go with the proposal here, that you're going to end up with somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.3 million if you did the turf.
And your figures are from what?
Well, going through and adding up different amounts here that are available, it's saying, okay, it's going to cost $75,000 to do this. It's going to cost, because
well, you've added something to me tonight that I don't know the price, that I can't guesstimate at how much that might cost.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll come back. I'll get my numbers together and I'll pass them to you. But my whole point is that, is it really something that we need to put before getting all the necessary repairs to all the facilities to do that, or does it need to be all done at one time to be completed? The turf needs to be in by next football season, all these things. Mm-hmm. I mean, because obviously you're the person that's out there walking the ground, seeing it. I mean, we've completed our walkthrough, we've assessed different things, but obviously the children are having to interact with these different facilities and things every day. I mean, should they not start with what needs to be addressed first and work our way up to having turf on the field? Or is it something that, hey, let's just go ahead and because I look at band hasn't been addressed and a few other things, and so while sports is certainly one of the major parts of what the system offers, is that, we also have to look at those different things, and that's a huge chunk of money on one thing, and I don't say that it solves every single problem.
Mr. Spears, I think that's something that the board's going to have to decide, whether you're willing to bite off that amount of money. But if you're asking me, are the facilities needed, I think y'all have seen our facilities. We're beyond need. It's been quite a while, and so, I guess that's up to you whether you want to bite it off in pieces or if you want to get it all done. But I do feel it needs all done.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions, Mr. Spears? Mr. Lewis? Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Latson?
I can wait until we get after there's a motion and a second on the floor, but I do have a comment I'd like to make at some point.
Okay, so if there aren't any other questions for Coach Green, that's going to take us to item number 2, which is the consideration to approve the increase from the fund balance in the amount not to exceed the $2 million for facilities and activities upgrade across the district. Is there a motion?
Madam President?
Mr. Lewis.
I'd like to make that motion not to exceed the $2 million.
Okay, it has been motioned by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Is second by Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion?
A couple things. I heard Mr. Spears mention the figure $2,300,000. So are we talking about $2 million or $2,000,003? I'd like a clarification on that.
We're talking about the figure that's stated on the agenda, which is not to exceed $2 million.
Okay. Now, here's the comment that I'd like to make. At the review meeting last week, I expressed some concern about spending $1 million on artificial turf. And since then, I have been researching the subject. I've also called a retired college athletic director to discuss the issue. The athletic director said, Glenn, I can't really tell you whether artificial turf is safe or not. He said there are people who embrace it, and people have some serious concerns and reservations about it. He said, I don't have the technical expertise to tell you one way or another, but I said, all I can tell you, it's a controversial subject. In my research, I came across a study that Amy Griffin, who was the soccer coach at the University of Washington, I think associate soccer coach, said that she did a study and found that 38 college soccer players who played on artificial turf developed cancer shortly after they quit playing soccer, and primarily lymphoma and leukemia. And I also found that Representative Frank Pallone, state of New Jersey, has sent a letter to the federal agency that oversees toxic substances and disease registry and asked them to do a study about the health hazards, if any, on artificial turf. I will tell you that I'm going to keep an open mind on this. I'm going to continue to call people. I'm going to continue to do research. But I just don't have the comfort level at this point to support a expenditure of $1 million for artificial turf.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Latzenheiser. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Spears.
My biggest issue, and I appreciate Coach Green for taking the time to do everything, and I'm not questioning anything. It's just that, we've gone from $200,000, $300,000 in expenditures that we addressed that needed to happen on the front end till now, not to exceed $2 million. And if you say not to exceed $2 million, I guarantee you the bills are going to come up $1 million, just a penny or so shy of that. And so, without having just absolute firm numbers to work with, I just don't see how that coming up with that number, you're going to fill in the voids with projects. And if you said it's going to cost this to this to this, and we come back each month as these projects move forward and we authorize this amount for this project and this amount, to me, it just, in my mind, sets a better strategy for accomplishing the same goals than just saying, here's $2 million, make it happen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Spears. Is there any other discussion? We have a motion by Mr. Lewis. We have a second by Mrs. Fisher. If there's no other discussion, all in favor of the consideration to approve the budget increase, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Mrs. Fisher, Ms. Verdell, and Mr. Lewis are in favor. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Mr. Lotzenheiser and Mr. Spears are both in opposition. The next item is item number 3, consideration to approve facilities and activities upgrades in the amount not to exceed the $2 million. This will require an action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Verdell, and Mr. Lewis are in favor. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Mr. Lotzenheiser and Mr. Spears are in opposition. The next item on the agenda is monthly financial statement reports. Board, we have had the opportunity to review reports numbered 1 through 7, beginning with the fund balance report and the monthly expenditure report. Are there any questions about any of the information that we've received? Okay. If not, the next item is item number E, certification and summary of reconciled bank statements. We've had an opportunity to review this document as well. Are there any questions or any issues? If not, item number F, monthly ad valorem tax collection analysis report. We've also had this document and had an opportunity to review it. Are there any questions for Mrs. McGarn?
Just one.
Ms. Spears?
Just that I am looking at the information correctly, is that there's still an ongoing trend of collections going down.
There is.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mrs. McGarn? If not, that brings us to item number 10, which is information items. The safety report. Board, we've had an opportunity to review that, and all of the dates to remember are listed here. There are 7 different dates that are provided on our agenda. And I would just ask that we would just take those into account and adhere accordingly. The next item on the agenda is item number C, 10C, which is... Yes, Mrs. Fisher.
Sorry. Question for Dr. Hickman on the activities, the dates to remember. Will Columbus Municipal School District be participating in the Christmas parade that's coming up next weekend? I don't see that.
It's not listed here, but typically, in the past, the band does participate.
Yeah, so that's why I just want to...
Ms. Sagle's in the audience, she could tell us.
Yes.
Okay.
Band
All right.
and ROTC?
Thank you. Band and ROTC.
Sorry, Ms. Fisher.
Now that brings us to item number 10C, which is the E-rate Wi-Fi bid, number 632, to be advertised January 2015. In order for this to happen, this does require an action. Board, is there a motion?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion?
If I could, would Beth be able to kind of elaborate a little bit more as to the process of what we're, asking, putting out bids for? I mean, obviously, I know you've kind of gone over with us before, but really now that we're here at the station.
Sure. E-rates is focusing for the next 2 to 5 years on wireless, and so it's an opportunity to have consistent wireless across the district in all our schools. And some of our schools have had wireless for quite some time, and so it's slower. And so the idea is that we'll have a 5-year budget with funding for 2 years. After, and the reason it's 2 years is because of presidential election coming up, and they don't know what's going to happen for the other 3 years. So the thing that our state E-rate coordinator recommends is that we go ahead and spend that money. You can spend it all in the first year. And so the idea is to prepare us for the next several years and get our wireless where it needs to be. In some schools we have casual use, we have coverage but casual use, but I think that we've got to look at not one-to-one, but multiple devices per student coming into our environment. And that's the purpose, is to prepare for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tippett. Are there any other questions for Ms. Tippett about E-rate? All right, so we do have a motion by Mr. Lotzenheiser, a second by Mr. Lewis. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Did you vote? Okay. So please let the record note that Mr. Lotzenheiser, Ms. Verdell, Mr. Lewis, and Mr. Spears are in favor. All opposed? And please let the record note that Mrs. Fisher is in opposition. The next item on our agenda is item number 11, closed determination for executive session. At this time, we'd ask that the public please step out.
So moved.
We need a motion.
Thank you. It has been motioned by Mr. Lewis, Mr. Spears, and second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. We ask that the public just step out for just a moment, please. There was no discussion, and it was unanimous. Now that we're back in regular session, the next item on the agenda is that for approval of the bills. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the claims docket and the claims docket recap report. It will require an action in order to approve to pay all of our vendors for this month.
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Spears. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser, second by Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion? All in favor, signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Meeting adjourned.